we all know who we're talking to. So we're going to start with Melissa. If you've been to one of our in-person Grill the Marketer events, you'll know Melissa as our MC, but she's so much more than that, and we're so thankful for her doing that role for us. But she's actually a working journalist with more than 20 years experience in TV, radio and print. She's held senior editorial roles in some of the biggest newsrooms around the country, and now has her own media business called MeBo Media. So that's her focus is to advise and train companies, government and individuals on how to navigate the media landscape, which includes obviously good times and bad times, and has especially in crisis communications, having seen it done extremely well and not so well from both sides of the spectrum. So Melissa is a pro producer and has worked with the aged sector after the Royal Commission. So crisis communications is not something that's new to her at all. So that's Melissa Bowen. Now, Tracy Hanson is my second cousin, and she's coming here, coming to us from as a seasoned professional with extensive experience in delivering strategic marketing and communications. As a skilled media trainer and communications specialist, she's collaborated with the Hong Kong and Australian governments during the Hong Kong riots last year, which seems like an absolute lifetime ago now. And with the oncoming threat of coronavirus, was invited by the Australian Chamber of Commerce to develop marketing and communication strategies, as well as policies and procedures in response to that challenging environment. So we thought that was a perfect, had some perfect synergies with what we were going to talk about today. So thanks for coming, Tracy. And Kate is a consummate marketing and communications professional with over 17 years experience in arts, culture, tourism, entertainment and the media. She has worked with small and large entities across many different industries before starting her own agency in 2017, which is called Kin & Co. Now, Kate was one of the people whose businesses had to go, her clients' businesses had to go hard and go early, being in the entertainment and event space. So she's written countless pieces of comms, and so she's joining us as our PR and marketing specialist from one of the industries that was most hardest hit. So thank you, Kate.
Cool. Carmel, let's go to our first question, and let's get into some questions and some crisis communications discussion. Do you want me to do it?
I'm just trying to catch up.
Okay, I will do it. All right. So the first thing, we've had a question about this directly, but I think this sums up a big thing I want to start our discussion with today. Internal and external communications during a crisis. There's two very specific, it's a very specific separation there. We're gonna kick it over to Tracy to get us started on this one. Tracy, give us some ideas and thoughts about communicating internally versus externally during a crisis. Oh no, wait a second. That's me jumping ahead. Sorry, wait, I've jumped ahead. My bad. Wait.
That's okay.
We're gonna get to that in a minute. Tracy, we're gonna get to you in a minute. I do want to start with defining a crisis though with Melissa. Melissa, go for it. Talk to us about crisis.
Yeah, I mean, a crisis can be lots of things. And the two, I believe the dividing line is a crisis that is of your own making and one that you have had no control on, at all. And so coronavirus is that typical one where a lot of people have landed themselves in this crisis through no fault of their own. There are many crises that are spinning out of that. Some of them are driven by bad decisions or lack of decisions or indecisiveness, but a lot of people have found themselves in this position to deal with. I think with the ones that often upset people are the ones where they feel like, I haven't done this. This is not my problem, but it is their problem. And even if it is a perception that people think that it's a crisis and they believe that they haven't done anything, that this isn't a problem, even that perception means that it is in fact a crisis. So you have to deal with it. I think that, you know, rarely is the best decision to do nothing, to say nothing and to do nothing. However, I also believe that in a crisis, restraint is everything. Think about what you want to say before you say it, because you probably only have one chance to say it initially and then build from that. And it is fine for people to say, you know, put big bucks behind crisis marketing. The reality is that lots of people don't have big bucks, and they most certainly don't have it during a crisis. So again, any money you're spending is wasted if you haven't thought about what you're trying to achieve with that. The biggest thing to do before you do anything is to work out who you're talking to and how this crisis affects them. Because like with all marketing, it's not about you and your product and your service. It's about them, how they're affected by this crisis or your crisis, what you can do to help them, and what you can do to sort of earn their trust so they'll listen to what you want to say.
Fantastic, fantastic. Is there a difference between the scale or, you know, talking to your own customer base and then talking on a wider marketing, like, you know, running a newspaper ad, like you were saying before, is just a shotgun to everyone? When do you think about differentiating between just trying to talk to your customer base and then going to that higher level brand awareness to everyone?
Look, I think essentially you're trying to say the same thing, but you're coming from a completely different position. If you have been a good marketer and a good communicator, you should have built some rapport with your audience. And they're not just your customers, they're also your staff. They're also your partners. They're also, you know, your wider networks. You want to make sure you take those people along with you, because you don't want to lose the people you have by forgetting them. So I think that if you've done a good job and you understand who those people are and you understand what they think of you, you can probably read their reaction to this crisis, be it coronavirus or anything else, and how you've dealt with it better. And you can probably address that more easily. Going out to a wider base depends on what you're trying to achieve. It depends on what you're trying to achieve and whether those people are actually affected by your crisis or not. And I suppose that opens up a whole other conversation about brand reputation, which is a broader conversation, but obviously fits into crisis comms.
So on that, I think that also it's about making sure that you're talking to your, you know, Clay, you asked about immediate versus wider audiences, and it's making sure that your audiences, be your community, be your customers, be your staff, be your suppliers, be, you know, whoever it is relevant to your industry, making sure that you've communicated with them first and don't feel like you need to elevate to the wider masses and let the whole world know what you're doing before you've sort of got your own backyard and your own sort of community sorted, and make sure they know how it's affected you, you've touched base how it's affecting them. And then maybe in the coming weeks and months, you start to look at those broader comms pieces to the masses. But if you haven't dealt with your immediate audiences and your communities and your staff first, and they see you talking to the broader masses, before you've spoken to them, that sort of for brand reputation and moving out of this crisis, specifically Corona, you'll find it more difficult. So making sure you've got your own internals and, you know, external to the degree that you work with them on a daily basis together. For me, that's been, and for my clients, that's been a really key immediate thing in the last 4 weeks.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Deal with your own backyard first. Absolutely. Before you go into all the other backyards. That leads us nicely into the point and the discussion about internal versus external. So Tracy, if I could bring you in on this, as we were mentioning before, what differences do you see, and what are some ideas and thoughts around differentiating between your internal and external?
Well, interestingly, I don't see a huge difference between what people need to hear from you, whether they're
Sure.
external or internal. I totally agree with Kate that you look after your own backyard first, and I would always put the staff and the teams that you're working with first, before the community, before the vendors, before everything else, because they often have ideas and concerns that you're not aware of. I think it's really important in management to understand what you might guess at what's impacting them, but you don't really know. If you don't know them well enough, or they're working remotely, they may have, for example, in Hong Kong, a tiny apartment shared with grandparents, 3 children, a helper and parents, and it's 300 square feet. They don't want to be on video. It's, you know, so little things like that, to know your staff and your people really well, and then to communicate to them in a way that they trust, because there's a lot of fake news out there. And they might be listening to that or forwarding things to each other, which escalates the problem in their minds, and it's not quite as bad as what they think. For example, in Hong Kong, when I was there for the protests, they were peaceful marches, essentially. And then suddenly they escalated, got very violent. At the time, we had an intern cohort from universities in Australia, so they were all doing internships at different corporates in Hong Kong. So, of course, the uni might be concerned. Obviously the students might be concerned because they may have never travelled before, they're not very worldly. So we had to put what we had with the Consulate General and with the Hong Kong government as a risk assessment, and then just figure out how we can address those issues and how to keep them informed on a regular basis, very precisely. And this is both internal and external, because internal, the cohort was our staff, really, because we brought them there to work, and so they were kind of under the umbrella of the Australian Chamber of Commerce. We had the university in Australia thinking, well, what's going on? And it's also for our forward business. We didn't want, this was before COVID, we didn't want to impact decisions of other interns coming to Hong Kong. But back on the actual internal with the Australian Consulate, with the Australian Chamber of Commerce, or any company, is the objective really is to build trust, and you have to reassure your staff that you are there for them. So the same message for the clients, really. You know, we're still here for you, but what can you do for us? What can we do for you? What are we doing for you now? So we tell them what you're doing, how you're taking care of the safety issues, how are you managing deliveries, how are you doing Zoom meetings, that kind of thing. And it's also key to have the channel that the most trusted delivery channel, and it's email. In fact, email is still the most trusted channel for internal corporate communications, and they love to see their CEO up there. So just as much as we love to see our PM up there, we love to see our CEO in the company, but the messages must be concise. They can't be all over the place. Like, unfortunately, Australia started out a bit of this, bit of that. Everyone was confused. So they have to be very clear, very short sentences. They have to have meaning. They have to be relevant. And then you communicate once a week or every day if there's a change. But don't just bombard them with information. Make sure, just follow the changes so that you can line with that, but always have a regular weekly or daily at exactly the same time when people can tune in and watch the CEO on video, preferably on an internal website or through Zoom. And that makes them feel confident. And then that flows onto marketing, because if your staff aren't confident, they're not going to sell your products, and they're not going to have the client facing or client conversation with the confidence if they didn't know what's happening in their own backyard. So I totally agree with Kate, and I think it's really, really important to have channels like Yammer or WhatsApp groups as well if it's a large company, and involve teams in the decision making on the ideas going forward, how it's going to work. There's so much to talk about, but we don't want to, there's so much noise out there as well, so we don't want to overburden people. So some larger companies that I know have set up a mini site within their site just on COVID and what the new working from home deal is, the different HR changes, all this kind of thing. The other thing that's really important too is, as I said initially, is relate to the people that you're talking to. You know, Melissa and Kate both stressed to know your audience. So the messages might change, but the concerns might be similar, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you make a message. But we can talk about messaging later if you like. I feel like
I think trust, trust is, I like your focus on trust. I think in a crisis, people are searching for something to grab onto. Everyone is dying to grab onto some sort of, regular, and it's the same with marketing. And I think people underestimate that people are actually always looking for the authority in an area. People are always looking to grab onto someone who knows what they're talking about. And a company can be that. And if you can just, create a way and a content, regular content. It's just like normal content. It's got to be regular, usually at the same time, consistent, all the usual stuff about building an audience with great content online. It's just tweaked a little bit when you're in a crisis. Does that sound, toward
right.
the crisis?
And in terms of marketing in a crisis, then you, as the other lady said before too, both of them, you focus on your existing clients. You don't go off trying to build your networks around things unless you have something to offer that's relevant.
Yeah.
It's not really worth spreading out the word. Just the branding idea is excellent because they had the message that was relevant, social distancing. So that's a really good branding exercise for brewery. But
in terms of leads and sales.
Yeah.
I think, like we were talking the other day, it's a really interesting experiment for anyone. If you look at the main way you communicate with your customers, as an example, and lots of small businesses might do that on Facebook and Instagram, as well as big businesses. But for small businesses, that might be the primary way that they do it. If you go through and you strip out everything that is a hard sell or a hard retail message, and you look at what's left, if you don't have anything left, you've got a big problem. And now's the time to do some work on that because you haven't worked out how you're going to build that trust. So you possibly don't have any trust to fall back on. And I think that's a really good test. And if you can see your other messages there, well, that's what you've put forward about yourself. That's what you can be building on. That's what you can be testing. It's a very good time to test things about what works and what doesn't work away from that sort of hard sell environment. But I think it is a really interesting test for everyone to do through their own channels, because now is the time where there is a lot of work to be done. And even though some businesses are going through terrible times where, they can't operate. So it doesn't mean, we use the example about Scott Morrison saying that he would like to be able to effectively put businesses into an economic hibernation, which is not, in my view, and I'm no economist, a bad idea for the business of business, but that has nothing to do with marketing. It doesn't mean stop talking to people. It doesn't mean you don't have messages, and in fact, very specific messages to send out. So it is a time maybe where marketing, and I said before, I think it is idealistic to say, let's throw our big bucks at, there's all these experts that say, now's the time to spend more. People don't necessarily have more, but it's time to be very specific. It's not business as usual. It's time to think about who you're talking to, what they're facing, and how you're going to connect with them.
I think talking about what's left if you strip out sales messages is awesome. I think a huge chunk of what is left is brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when if you haven't got anything left after sales messages have been removed, your brand is probably lacking, and you're working on a price and volume kind of, you're just probably talking about price and whatever you're selling, and it's just sell the entire time. That's such a great point. I love that. I think everyone should really think about that, removing their sales messages from their communications and seeing what's left. That moves us. Yeah.
No, you're right.
Go for it.
No, I was just going to say that I think that from the people and clients I'm speaking to, and maybe people in this group, they're struggling between knowing when to do the sell message and when to not, and how, what's the right mix of that. And it really depends on your product or your service, what you're selling and what you're doing. If it's relevant to now, then you can be doing that sell message in a way that's not offensive. If you're selling if you sell wine, home delivery wine, or you're a fashion brand, and then your message is, my clothes are now super comfy to lounge around the couch on. Here's the jumper. Whereas it's exactly the same jumper that last month you probably told them was to be worn out on date night. So it's about making sure there is still an opportunity to sell if it's the right product or service for now, because we still need things, but it might not be what you thought they needed, or you're selling the same thing in a different way. Or if you don't have something to sell, then it's about what information can I share with you, or what can I do for you that's going to help you, and I don't need anything from you, but from my brand to your brand, here's something we found really useful. And we've been doing a lot of workshopping with our clients around, what do you offer that they don't need to give you money for? Like, they're chefs and they're hoteliers and they're marketers, and there's services we can all give that don't need money back now, but that will translate into some brand loyalty on the other side of this. And I think people need to think about the other side of this, and not the dollar today sometimes as well.
So true.
Sorry, especially those that don't have strong brand, a very strong brand. This is, as you say, a very good time for them to work on branding, and what is the meaningful discussion they could have with their clients only about selling. That's not meaningful, and it's not useful right now. I totally agree, unless it's something relevant, as you said.
Yeah, I think it's funny because once you also strip out selling, you're left with content, right? And content marketing, it's all the same discussion. It's like, okay, when you're trying to come up with great content, I think you need to be thinking about what is your specialty, what can you communicate and tell people about that they want to hear about from you that's not selling. And it's the same problem, right?
It's got to be in your brand and your tone. Like, I use the word authentic a lot, and it drives me crazy as well. But if it's not authentic, even now more than ever, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. You might be working for polished companies like banks or, those sort of companies that are traditionally very polished online, but now maybe it's not the time for that super polished message.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Let the walls down.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with a client who was very keen to be in market at the moment because all of their competitors were in market, and that's a whole other conversation. But they knew they wanted to be in market, and they thought the best way to do that, they wanted to know, do we have time to do a new campaign, and is it going to be good enough, or do we take our old campaign and can we just get that back out there? And my answer and I think that this applies pretty much to everyone, is that any money that you are spending behind a campaign that was put together in November for a world that was completely different is now wasted at the moment. It's not for the bin, but for the moment, if you actually want to be in market right now, and that's fine, you need to do something that recognises that everyone's world is clouded and in this completely different situation than November. So if you want to do it, let's do something different. And I think that is pretty much across the board. You have to be flexible. Lots of people are being, and Kate, brought this up the other day when we were talking, being flexible with their businesses. They're, pivoting their businesses. They're looking at different things that they can do. But you also have to be flexible but consistent with your messaging and your communications. There is no room for irrelevance at the moment. Wherever.
Yeah, no, such great points. I think that's going to lead us beautifully into marketing during a crisis, because I wanted to start off and talk about communications and that consistency, internal and external, but then getting into the sales and marketing. And we're talking leads, we're talking lead generation, we're talking, products, e-commerce. There are people out there who can be running ads and are running tons of ads at the moment. And so I wanted to bring in Karma at this point. Karma, let's talk about ads. And we had such a great phrase to start you off. Do you remember it?
No.
I wrote it down. To lead us into marketing in a crisis. I think this phrase sums it up. people are still buying things.
Oh, yeah. I think Kate already beat me to that in this one.
Yeah, you already said that. You already kind of said that. People are still buying things, right? And people still have problems.
They still have problems. They need your product or your service potentially to solve them. And what we didn't want to do was to give anybody business advice on what they should be doing with their business. But for people who have made, or businesses who have made the decision to market or to bring new products to the market or to operate in an altered capacity if they're able to, you know, there are still people out there who are buying things, you know, for either a bit of retail therapy or, you know, they still need a new pair of Zoom friendly tops or tracksuit pants. You know, so there's still things that we need to buy as a bunch of consumers. And right now, the way that, you know, say for example, Facebook ads work is you bid on an audience. And if you've been on, for example, in Perth, you had a lot of competition previously, whereas now, since a lot of the advertisers have dropped out of the market, if you've got messaging that's sensitive and relevant, you're going to be able to cut through much easier with much lower costs than you could 2 months ago.
Fantastic. And talk to me about tone. I want to hear tone and messaging, guys. Okay.
I was just going to say that, and I'm just reading, like scanning the messages in the chat as well.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, guys. Loving the comments. Hit us with the comments.
We don't need, if your product isn't relevant or it's not a relevant offering to your business, don't try and jam it into coronavirus. Like I've just seen someone say Rocket Man selling sanitary and soap. Like that's just a ridiculous sort of segue into a product line that just doesn't match your brand and doesn't match your offering. Like there's some brands and offerings that can naturally slide into the coronavirus and helping problems. And there's others that aren't as obvious. But if it's so...
Okay, you keep going. We were talking about messaging.
Yeah, it was just around, you know, it doesn't need... I think we're moving through the part where it needs to be specifically about coronavirus. And now it's just about, and I hate the term, the new normal. And so you can... As Karma and Clay have alluded to, there are problems that we all face every day. They're just slightly different problems. So how can your services or offerings target to that without talking about the coronavirus? Because we all know we're in the coronavirus or C-19 or whatever language you're using. And I think, you know, yesterday was a month. Yesterday was 4 weeks. And I think we're coming through the next phase where we can talk and communicate with our audiences and customers without referring to it, because it's like stating the obvious now, like we're in it. And so it's moving through that next phase and talking about the problems we're facing, you know, the day-to-day problems we're facing, living and working from home. And you can start to phase out the very obvious reference to Corona-19.
Yeah, I mean, I might be doubling up on what I missed. Sorry, I dropped out. But I think that now a lot of people are running the risk of their messages being seen as all too generic and not specific, because they all start with, it's, you know, it's the new normal, it's so different, it's so, you know, like you can scrap it. And sorry if I've doubled up with what you've just said, but I agree. I think that is now wasted air.
Yeah. Is there a template email online somewhere that you can download and just put company name and due to strange times and hope you're all safe?
Uncertain.
Yeah. I think it's
so quickly. Sorry, Clay, but particularly content that we're working with clients, you know, that have a nightclub, and we're looking at live streaming DJ sets and what that looks like and all this stuff. But what we filmed 2 weeks ago is now boring and redundant compared to all the crazy stuff that people are doing. And I said to the client this morning, I was like, it's moving fast, it's a bit redundant. And he's like, it is moving fast, and something you did 2 weeks ago is now outdated. But that's the pace that content marketing is at. And don't be afraid to just keep trying new things, because things are moving so quickly and will potentially be redundant tomorrow. So it's okay to have a bit of a crack at the moment, I think. As long as you stay true and authentic to the brand, but have a crack.
Sorry, advertisers have had some time to be able to come up with some new content, even the traditionally slower brands. There's a new TVC out for Colgate, which is just beautiful. And it's all filmed vertical to look like it's FaceTime, and you don't know what the ad's for until the very end. And it's just, you know, it's really relatable. It's really what's in our current world at the moment, connecting to people through these screens with all of their glitches and issues. And you know, that's an example of something that they would not have done last year. It's just, it's absolutely a result of the crisis that we're in, and they've had long enough to get some content out and not be overly polished and just sort of go, yeah, this is, you know, I think everyone's threshold.
Do you know what's funny? Do you know what's funny, Karma? Is that I love that Colgate video. You sent it through and it's amazing. I definitely think everyone should watch it. But that ad would have worked a year ago.
Maybe, but they wouldn't have put it out.
They would never have thought about it. I mean, it wasn't like nobody was video chatting 6 months ago.
No, they totally were, but the Colgate,
like billions of people are FaceTiming and chatting and doing Zoom meetings and video 6 months ago. But one of my favorite marketing and business commentators was like, this disease is an accelerant in so many areas. Like, it's speeding up what was already happening. Like, people were already video chatting, but now it's just turned it up to 11. People were already buying things online, turn it up. Like, it's just done a lot of speed up, which I think has been really interesting. So yeah, Colgate was a great example. Now, Carmen, did you manage to put together, I wanted you to put together three ideas for marketing.
Good example. And
yes.
This probably comes into my three sort of tips, which I didn't really eventuate. So we're just going to keep it.
Okay.
That's what we do now.
Yeah.
But is, you know, venues that are all closed or at least operating under limited capacity, such as hospitality.
They're doing it super tough. They are on the front line.
Absolutely. But I've seen...
Yeah,
I've seen some really great examples of like a content shift. I don't want to use the word pivot again. And that's one that has just caught my eye, and I'm sure there's many others doing it as well, is the Bruising Crown. Now, I don't know if you've seen the Bruising Crown's Facebook page, but they've kind of turned it into like...
Who are they? Who's the Bruising Crown?
It's a pub in Guildford.
Very good pub. Roast.
I think it's been there since like the late 1800s. So if you don't know of it, you need to go check it out. But it's they've sort of turned their Facebook page, which up until, you know, mid-March-ish was just photos of the venue, photos of the food, blah blah blah. This band will be on, and then given a video camera to the chefs, and they've kind of turned it into this cooking show / vlog. And it's, you know, here's this piece of fish and this is how we're going to cut it up and this is what's on special and this is how fresh it is and here's how to make a tartare sauce. And it's just, it's not live generally, but it's just fabulous. And that's how to stay relevant. That's staying relevant with an audience who may not be in your delivery area and might not be able to order, you know, your special fish and chips that you made keto friendly for us weirdo ketos. But they're still relevant. You've still given your audience something. You've still given them a reason to tune in or a reason to smile or something for, you know, ISO boredom related every time I see a post, I'm like, oh, what are they doing now? And it's just, I just think that, you know, wouldn't have taken a genius to figure it out, but just the purity and the wholesomeness that it's with is just so, it just warms my little marketing heart.
See, that's so good.
You know, it doesn't cost often a lot to give your community something. And, you know, people love talking about community and what we said before, that if you strip out all your messages, you're not left with anything after the hard sell. You're kidding yourself. You don't have a community. So if you really want to set about looking after that community or building that community, you have to understand what they need. And even if it's something that you don't offer, is it that hard to post something? Hey, here are some great links of things that can help you, like the Rose and Crown Facebook page, like a charity that's doing something, like a great, you know, like it doesn't cost you anything, but that's understanding your community, not giving them what you do, but giving them something, and that builds connection.
I think the master stroke for me, if I could just jump in, I think the master stroke for me is when you can align these cool, fun, funky content ideas with the value propositions that you're trying to communicate about your business, right? Yes. Just being funny, like being funny is cool, right? So let's say you can do something that's funny, as there's some staff member who can do something that's funny. They can fit like 5 golf balls in their mouth or something. Awesome, right? And that's a fun idea, and it might get engagement. But if you can go the next stage and think about how do we do that and also communicate the strengths of our company, then you're really starting to create great aligned content.
Yeah. And I think what we discussed the other day was around, if you're not talking to your community now, when you don't need them, in inverted commas, because they can't buy anything from you, but then you expect to come back in 3 months or 6 months and start talking to them again because you've got something to sell them. Like that's you're actually setting yourself up for failure now. So you've got to invest in content that's relevant. So cooking, you know, cocktail making classes if you're a bar, or you know, learn to DJ with our house DJs, or you know, all these cooking shows, or if you're a painter and you make clothes, like jump online and like teach me how to make a dress with a sewing machine. It'd be terrible, but you know, that sort of content that does look at your value propositions and what you offer as a service, but isn't selling the goods.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and like, you know, exactly like we said the other day, if you don't talk, it's fine to throw out the messages when you're selling something. If you don't talk to people in the harder times, either they'll forget about you by the time you're back, or they'll remember that you didn't think they were worth talking to when you didn't have something to sell.
And what was
so
that?
Both those things are a problem.
That's if they remember you at all.
Yeah, that's right. They'll forget you.
And I know that a few people are talking about discounting, and a few, you know, at the beginning, everyone was coming out and giving, you know, free month this off that, and which is great. But there's also some companies that aren't in a position to do that. So don't feel like if that's not your only option. Discounting what you offer, and discounting your service can actually be detrimental to your service, because you might not be able to bring it back up.
Same as always.
You might not be able to bring it back up. So you've got to hold your value and add value rather than take value off. Try and add value to make it seem more appropriate.
I think this is the problem I see over and over and over again when people are trying to think about creating content, is they completely miss the amount of expertise and skills and knowledge that they have kicking around in their brain for their industry and their job, and it's all there. You've got all the knowledge, and it's just more about getting it out and aligning it to what you do and what brand you want to create. It's all there. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. If you are good at what you do, you have a ton of knowledge, and it's just about getting creative about communicating that knowledge. It's fascinating that now those people in the toughest on the front lines are now stuck with content marketing. That's all they that's all they can do.
Do you know what's really interesting to me as well is that a lot of those Lambo marketers with the $997 course, they all disappeared.
They did.
But can't they?
They totally did.
Tomorrow?
Yeah. And actually look, I want to get to some Q&A. So if anyone's got any questions, I mean, I could talk content marketing all day, but we got to keep moving. So if anybody listening has got any questions, please put them in. I've got a really good question here from Monique in the chat here, which I think is a really good question. How do you stand out with your comms amongst the noise? Every org or company I've ever dealt with are sending their own version of what they are doing and be safe messages. I think Kate's 100% on the money. I think we're past that now. I think you can cut straight to value, or maybe Mel said it actually, sorry. I think Mel said it, where you can just cut straight to value.
And I copied it.
Yeah. So I think you can cut straight to value now. Like for you, Monique, with your walking tours, you can just cut straight to an epic video about something, like a cool piece of content, and you hit people in the inbox with that, and it's just a cool piece of content, right? That's relevant.
Could you go on a virtual walking group?
A virtual walking group. Take people around take me down to a bar and talk to them. And you know what? Tell me how that bar's going.
Yeah.
Are they complete? Well, no, do it. Go to their door. You can still go outside. But you could take people out to a bar and be like, and then go talk to the owner over Zoom. Maybe you talk to the owners of the bars that you take people to, and they can tell you how fucked everything is for them right now. And that kind of story, and like, that's interesting. That's great content. There's so much out there. So it's more about relevance and quality, which ironically, it's always been about that, right? It's always been about relevance and quality. That's how you stand out. It's the same now.
Yeah, I'm just
cool. Do we have any more? Does anyone else want to jump in? Have I scared everyone away with that one?
Oh, no, I was just trying to keep quiet because I don't want to give away any of Monique's.
Yeah, well, sounds like we might be watch this space, apparently.
Yeah, Monique's got heaps of great ideas, I'm sure.
I'm just going to mute my microphone and get rid of this dog.
Yeah, thanks.
I think, Clay, that it's Tracy here. I'm thinking it's quite difficult.
Tracy, put your video on. Put your video on, Tracy. We can't see you.
Oh, I thought it was on. I'm sorry.
You're a mysterious figure at the moment.
Voice.
You're a voice,
really
you're behind the curtain. Come out, Tracy. Come out into the light.
I thought I was in the lights. This is so bizarre because
Okay, just talk then. Just talk then. While you figure out the clicking.
Well, okay, yeah, I won't click. I was thinking it's quite difficult for some people in the services industry to add value right now. So I'm talking about people like travel agents or people advisory, legal, that kind of thing. I noticed there was a good idea in the UK where a lady similar to some of us on this call, she's offering to put 20% of her fee towards a charity that's nominated by her clients. So she's not discounting, she's adding something to the community, and she's still getting work. So I think that was quite a good idea. But did you have any other thoughts, Clay, on the services industry and specifically some of the questions that came in, like from the travel industry? Yeah,
I think the travel, it just goes to that same thing where it's a content marketing discussion now. It's storytelling, it's relevant, interesting, authority building content, right? Whether it's a community where you're trying to be like, so if you're, say, a real estate agent and nobody's buying houses in your town, right? Which I'm sure there are people that are like gutted right now trying to sell houses. Chase is back, yes. Then talk to some businesses, talk to some people who are trying to sell houses. What are their story? There's so many ideas out there.
The other thing I have to say about content marketing is, at the moment, and this crisis might be quite specific, though there's some common themes that run through all of them. At the moment, there are a lot of businesses that aren't in position to do the day-to-day activities that they do. And so when we say, well, that doesn't mean you don't need to say anything, let's put content out, let's say things. Let's also think about how long is this going to take? Now, no one knows the answer to that. But where are we trying to get to? What are going to be the challenges when we reopen? Like, for example, bars. What are the challenges when they say, okay, you can reopen, but people, A, don't have that disposable income, or B, are not quite sure how they feel about social distancing and going to bars, or, where are we at then? So why not think about staggering and pre-preparing and stockpiling some of our content? Now, the danger with that, of course, is that in a crisis, you can never be sure exactly how it's going to play out. And this one has been the perfect example of how, things have changed so much, even in, 4 days or, 2 weeks. So, but you can have a bit of a breath to think about it and start getting all your ducks in a row because, as anyone that's ever done content marketing or content marketing planning knows, knowing that you've got something in like the war chest is just gold. And even if you've got to tinker with it and you've got to make it more relevant, it is so much easier than playing catch up all the time. So I would suggest that people look at a crisis of what you're dealing with now, but also what are you going to need on the other side of it, because it's going to take a long time. There's going to be a couple of different phases.
Yeah, and Karma, it's sort of what sparked me coming on here when we were chatting a couple of weeks ago around the businesses that are planning for what happens post this, and what do your comms look like, and what does your service look like. And you know, Mike, we run mass events, you know, so the event landscape and running mass events are going to come back, but they're going to be the last, and they're going to look very different. And waiting till we're told we can do them and then start thinking about what they're going to look like isn't a very good strategy. So we're already thinking about what infrastructure we're going to need to buy, or what processes we're going to need to put in place now. We might not need those for a year. And as you say, Mel, we'll probably need to tweak them a bit, but there's some, you know, rational thinking around the things that we'll be needing to be happening. So doing that now and using this time now for that planning, the companies and suppliers that are doing that are going to come out of this quicker rather than chasing their tail, I think, once the doors are allowed to be flung open.
Look, we've got a great question in the chat, which I'd love to throw open to the team, because I'd love to help Peter out. Peter, thanks for being here with us today, mate. You're in the wedding and entertainment industry, and you are on Zero events. And look, I know people in this space as well. And my friend's a makeup artist, and she's just been wiped out at the moment. And you say you can't supply what we do, and I can't think of a way of running a photo booth in this time. So you're doing behind the scenes vids. And thanks to everyone else who's getting involved in the chat, which is great, and giving Pete some ideas. I'll start. It's the same story. It's the same story as if we weren't in quarantine of a pandemic. People still want to take photos, and I think it's just about going back to the brand and what authority can you bring, and what space can you inhabit as an authority. If you're a photographer, then you have oodles of knowledge that could be helping people right now. And if you get a little bit more relevant, you can get hyper relevant if you want, and try to be like taking selfies at home or running Zoom sessions, how to light your Zoom session. I'm sure you'd have some expertise on that. Stuff like that, you know, that's a good idea. Carmen said, if I send you a photo, can you make me 22 and slim? Man, Photoshop your clients. That's a great idea.
And also, I think, like digital photo books, I've been seeing lots of hibernation, like scrapbooking, or going back to the old days when you used to put them in a album. Peter, I don't know if I could send you all of the pictures of my son and you can put them into an album and send them back to me. You know, that sort of offering, which is what your clients would have been looking for, but maybe just not at the specific event that you're doing it for.
Yeah.
Great idea. Mel, anything from you?
No, but I would definitely take you up on that service. I promise that I actually am going to get some photos of my second and third child. Everything on number one.
Yeah, photo
I think and I think a lot of businesses, especially I find with some older demographics like my dad, they get trapped in the idea that there's already options out there for what these other ideas that they might be coming up with, or content as well, whether it's a product offering, a different product offering, or different kind of content. And that's so not true, right? Like if for example, you've come to my wedding and done a great job, Pete, and then I get an offer from you for a photo book, I know you, I trust you, I think you're great already. I am so far down the customer journey of buying whatever you're selling, it's not even funny. So I think everyone needs to everyone needs to stop thinking, oh, this video has been made 1,000 times. This product's been offered 1,000 times. It's about you offering it and how you do it. That separates it.
I definitely agree with that. I think that it's easy to say, oh, there's plenty of people that have been doing this for so long and they know how to do it and they're doing a great job. But it's about trust, like you say, but it's also about getting in front of people, because, you know, like that's what marketing is for, right? And comms, you know, having a great service or a great product is nothing if you can't get in front of the right people. And if you already have that connection, and it goes back to looking after your own backyard in good and bad, trust will take you a long way.
So many good ideas. I think we're going to have to wrap this up, guys. This has been super fun, because we've been going for an hour, and that's definitely enough of my face in everyone's house and screen. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone for coming, guys. Kate, Mel, Tracy, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I hope everybody who joined in got heaps of value out of it.
We'd be happy to put you in touch with our 3 guests if you want to drop us an email at hey@themarketer.news, so that we don't have to say everybody's website and contact details. We will funnel it through if you'd like any comms advice from our 3 professionals.
Yeah, I'm sure these guys are very happy to talk to anyone and everyone who's jumped on today. It's a time where I think I've actually not been talking about it enough. I feel like I've been listening to so much news and listening to so much that I haven't done enough thinking and like for my own business, and enough thinking about marketing, which sounds strange, but I just haven't, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people. So thanks so much, everyone. Karma, great job.
Can I just add a final thought?
Please.
Social media wise, guys, I think we've all sort of seen that it's kind of got back to its roots. You know, we used to actually check our social media channels to see what was happening with our friends and to stay connected. And we've got, you know, pretty jaded with that, and it became about brand messaging and that kind of thing. But as a person and as a human, I think I've never been more connected to other humans than I've been in the last few weeks. And a lot of that is because social media is kind of having a bit of a renaissance in that regard. So lean in.
Great. All right. Thanks so much to our guests. Thanks to everyone for checking in. Thanks, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.